Hey guys, it's Digital back again with Heavy Metal Reptiles, and today we've got Baphomet out again to hang out because he's cool. We're gonna talk about the cheapest reptiles to keep today. Obviously, there's gonna be cheaper reptiles to buy as far as your initial cost goes, but this is gonna be kind of like overall monthly, weekly, daily care. These are going to be on your cheaper side of it. Yeah, just going to do a quick run through with it, I guess. One of them's kind of pointless. I don't think people, actually I know people actually own these for pets, but I don't know why you ever would. So, but they're cheap. Alright, so we're going to start with number 5, and that's boas. So boas are going to be on the more expensive side when you first get them. Your enclosures are going to run you a little bit more than average because they normally get a little bit bigger. So you're going to need something bigger for, say, a red-tailed boa than you would for like a normal ball python. So you're going to run into a little bit of money there. But for the most part, boas, once they reach full maturity, are only eating once every 2 weeks to 3 weeks. I know some people just feed really big meals once a month, so the feeding costs on them stay really low, which kind of balances out the enclosure cost that you're going to have. Obviously, with a bigger enclosure, you have more substrate. I would like you to come out, Baphomet. I want to see you. You're going to have more substrate, but the thing is as long as you're properly spot cleaning your enclosures, you aren't going to be putting a whole lot of money into substrate very often. You should be cleaning the cage completely out at least once to a month, every month and a half, but still, you're not going to run into a lot. They don't need a whole lot of substrate in the bottom of their enclosure because they don't burrow or anything like that very often. I've seen them do it before, but it's not like they're always underground. So there's more expensive sides and least expensive sides, but like I said, for daily overall care, they're more on the cheaper side and are pretty easily affordable. You're going to pay more up front for the actual snake, where you can pick something like this up for $100, at a crappy pet store, compared to your breeders where you can pick these up for 50 to 60 bucks. But your boas, you're going to be paying like 150 to 250 bucks normally, depending on where you're going and who you're getting from. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to number 4. So, number 4 will be ball pythons, and the reason ball pythons are still so high on the list, or low on the list, is because they do cost a little bit more money than what we're going to get into as far as the cheaper ones. These guys should be eaten at least twice a month, so every other week at full maturity as babies, or hatchlings and sub-juveniles, or whatever you want to call them. They should be eaten once a week. The cost for their food isn't outrageous unless you have a crappy pet store. But it does get pretty expensive, especially for like on a week when, because I split mine up for the adults, our Florida king snake and Baphomet eat on the same week, and then Courtney eats the opposite week. And we do that to that way we aren't throwing all kinds of money at once. But when we have the majority of the snakes eating that week, is pretty expensive. But it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to feed these guys. They stay with pretty small prey, rats and things. Some people tell you only have to feed these guys once a month, and some people say every week. I do mine every 2 weeks once they hit full maturity. Baphomet here gets fed every 2 weeks, and you can see he's a pretty good size. He's kind of like starting blue, so he's pretty shy right now. But he's a good size. He's not underweight, he's not overweight, and that's kind of what you're shooting for. If you notice that your snake is getting skinny or thin, you're noticing sagging skin on him or whatever, then you adjust the food. But these guys don't really cost me a whole lot. The heating is cheap for their enclosures. If you're running a heating pad with a thermostat, you really aren't going to see any fluctuation, like as far as your electric bill goes or anything like that. So, yep, I would say these guys are definitely one of the cheaper reptiles you can get, but definitely not the cheapest. So we'll go ahead and move on to number 3. So number 3 is the one I was talking about. They are extremely cheap to keep. They eat pretty much insects and require little to nothing in their enclosure and don't require a big enclosure. You might spend $10, $15 every 2 weeks to feed these guys, and that depends on what you're feeding them. But it's Anoles. I don't know why people would keep Anoles. I want to buy one just to feed it to my king snake, if I'm being honest with you. It's just, they're pointless pets, I feel like. But that's my opinion. Some people like them. There's a guy that keeps like 50 of them. You can't play with them. They're way too fast. They aren't like crested geckos or leopard geckos where they have a personality. They're just lizards. I mean, if you really like them that much, I think there are Anoles that run around in Florida. Pretty sure that's what they're running around in Florida, yeah. So you want to watch Anoles run, go to Florida. You can't give these guys a big enough enclosure. They're extremely active animals, so I don't even recommend keeping them in captivity. Like I said, you can't really get them out and mess with them because unless you got like a box to put them in to let them run. But I definitely think that they're cheap. You can buy one for $10. You can put them on virtually any substrate. From what I understand, they do require specific humidity and temperature, but it's nothing that's hard to achieve. You know, they're going to be like the dirt cheap option if you're just kind of wanting something to look at. So that would be number 3. Like I said, I don't recommend owning one of these things, but that's just my opinion. You do what you do. So we'll go ahead and move on to number 2. Okay, so number 2 is going to be corn snakes. And I say that corn snakes are a cheap option to go because A, they're dirt cheap. You can find them under $100. Except for morphs. When I actually got into snakes, I remember the morph, like your albino corn snakes and things, didn't cost any extra money, believe it or not. I mean, Petco carried albino corn snakes and would sell them for like $60. So, and that was what they sold everything at. So it's kind of weird now to think that you have the palmettos, I think is what they're called, corn snakes, that I've heard are like hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, something like that. They're expensive, I know that. So there are some more expensive initial costs to get the animal. Obviously, though, if you're looking for a cheap animal, and you're probably watching this video because you want a cheap reptile, you're going to go with your normal store-bought corn snake. And they're pretty cheap because they're capped on aspen. They never get big enough for anything more than a weaned rat. So, depending on where you go, most pet stores that you're going to be able to buy feeders from sell weaned rats less than what they would a normal rat. All of the ball pythons will eventually get onto full-sized rat, or not full-size, but get onto rats. So their daily overall care, I mean water, hides, and things like that, they aren't really that expensive. You're going to be well under probably, I don't know, $10 a month for them, depending on how often you're feeding. Again, those are one of those snakes. Some people I know feed every other week. Some people I know feed weekly with adults. Just depends. Like I said, you watch your snake and you watch their weight. like me and the wife were talking while we were sitting here in between one of the cuts, and was looking at Baphomet here. He's kind of got some saggy skin and things, like he might need to do a soak and get hydrated a little bit. So we'll probably be doing that with him here soon. But they're definitely a lower costing animal. They do require heat, and again, it's one of those that it's not going to affect your electric bill hardly at all. You know, where are you going, Beth? You're moving the microphone. You're moving. Don't make me get the probes out. We'll sex you again, dude. Anyways, they're a lower end or cheaper animal to keep, to buy, to have. They are not expensive by any means in pretty much any subject. So go ahead and move on to number 1. So number 1 is actually going to be leopard geckos. Leopard geckos, for the most part, are pretty cheap. You buy them cheap. Their housing's cheap. Most people recommend a 20-gallon to 29-gallon for one. And their substrate is virtually like free, depending on where you live. You can go and actually put them on sand, like play sand. I've heard of people putting them on and things. It's commonly known that it causes impactions and things like that. So, I mean, I don't necessarily recommend it, but I don't necessarily recommend the reptile carpet either, which is actually what I use because I've seen a lot of bad things about them getting their nails caught and things like that. So it's kind of like choose the less of two evils, I guess. Personally, I haven't had any problems with my leopard gecko getting their nails caught on the mats, but apparently it has happened and it's been messy. So, I mean, unfortunately with leopard geckos, I think that their substrate is just something we need to work on as all keepers and kind of perfect and try to get better with. Because like I said, you have sand, which realistically in the wild, they're on a sandy style terrain or habitat. So you wouldn't think that it would cause any serious health problems, but it is known to cause impactions with leopard geckos. And then, like I said, the mats cause their nails get stuck in and things. So it's kind of a catch-22, and I think that we need to do better at finding a new substrate for them. But either way, the two available substrates we have that we recommend now aren't that expensive. And if you wanted to, you could actually go out and buy tile and cut it to fit the bottom of the enclosure. It's easy to clean and things, so I guess it's a good substrate to use. I just don't use it because I feel like it gets a little warm, just from what I know of other people using it and things. They say they have to really work with their lighting and things for it. But so your substrate, for the most part, is going to be either reusable and you're only going to have to buy it once, or the stuff that you have to keep buying is pretty cheap and you don't usually have to replace it very often. The feed, like I said, is just dirt cheap for them realistically, especially if you're doing crickets. When you do crickets with them, it's really not hard. I think we get a dozen for like $3, so it's not an animal that's going to break your bank by any means, and I definitely think out of everything we've listed here today, it's the cheaper option. Now, with those guys, one of them you're not going to see a difference in your electric bill as far as the lighting goes. You know, it's, for us at least, we use a 75 watt, I think, heating bulb, or 100 watt. Might be 150 watt. I don't know. I didn't check before we started the video. Sue me. Anyways, it keeps it warm. I know it's not the highest you can buy, but it keeps her warm even in the winter when I'm regulating the rest of the room. It's keeping her around 95 to 100 degrees in her basking spot. And now this time of year, I actually might need to start looking at getting a lower wattage bulb because she's getting to 105 in her basking spot. So there's not really a big electric difference there that you're going to notice as far as your bills go. So we're going to go ahead and skip out to the intro, or outro. So I know I made a list about the cheapest reptiles, but I can tell you guys one thing is don't go shopping for the cheapest reptiles. If you want to get into this, do your research, save your money back, and get something that you're going to love and like to hold and take care of, because they are a chore. They do become a chore where there's days when you don't feel like doing certain things that you got to do. It's like today I didn't feel like feeding. Really didn't want to feed today, but I had to go through and feed. We actually got some sunbeam snakes, which they're going to be involved in some videos coming up. They're male and female. I'm going to attempt to breed those. I've heard they're extremely hard to breed, so it's kind of like a project of mine I'm going to work on. But I had to go out and feed them, and it's really fun to see a new species eat. Every time I get into something new and watch them eat for the first time, it's really cool. But yeah, all I can tell you guys is I know I talked about the cheapest reptiles, but if any of these you're going to buy strictly because they're cheap, I would recommend you just not buying one and wait until you can get something you truly want to start with, and then start exploring your options into things that you might think is cool and just wanting to mess around with and stuff. Because like I said, you've got to be dedicated once you buy these guys. Now, like always, like, subscribe, check us out on YouTube, there's other videos that they can look at. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Pretty sure there's links in the bio now here on YouTube. So, and I think I've said that every video since we've put the links in the bio. So, yeah, check it out, get a hold of me like I've said before. Let me know how I can make the videos more enjoyable to watch and make them better. You know, message me on Instagram or comment on the video or whatever. And, yeah, rock on, friends. See you in the next video.